Hi, welcome to Pediatric Restorative Dentistry Part 3, subsection B. In this particular presentation, we are going to discuss about stainless steel crown used in restoring primary teeth. So the intended learning outcome is that you will be able to explain the uses, indications, and contraindications, and the techniques for use of stainless steel crowns. In the last section, we had looked at the strip crowns. In this section, we are going to look at stainless steel crowns. So stainless steel crowns are basically these. We see these are full coverage, metallic, definitive restorative material. Of course, these are semi-permanent restoration because they are going to stay on the tooth till the life of the primary tooth, which is limited. So this is also called as a semi-permanent restoration, and it was introduced by Humphrey essentially to overcome the problem of amalgam retention in posterior teeth. So in posterior teeth, if we had multi-surface caries, the tooth preparation to receive amalgam was very extensive and the retention of the amalgam was very poor. So Humphrey came up with an idea to put a full coverage crown using a stainless steel restorative material. So this now was initially chrome steel crown, now it has become stainless steel. So let's see how it has changed. So like I told you, in primary teeth, we have a smaller size and caries progression is much faster. The pulp is larger and it's difficult to make complex restoration, especially if it is multi-surface restoration. So if a tooth has got mesial and distal and a buccal caries, essentially we need some full coverage crown to ensure that the restorative material stay in place and the tooth is protected from loss or fracture of crown or failure of restoration or from recurrent caries. So the advantage is that relative lack of sensitivity to oral conditions during placement and cementations. Unlike how we had seen stainless steel crown where the retention was coming from the micromechanical etching of the enamel, here there is no micromechanical. Here we're going to use the undercut on the buccal bulge. So here it is less technique sensitive as compared to the strip crowns using composite restorations. The lifespan and the replacement is far superior to multi-surface amalgam restorations. With respect, it is more cost effective because the failure rate is very less and it is acceptable to both patients and dentists because it is one of the posterior teeth. The aesthetic is not of a much concern here. So it is also acceptable by the parents as well as a full coverage crown. So we will see how in what particular cases it is indicated for crown selection. So if you see here in the radiograph, this particular patient has got caries on this surface, here this surface. All right. So this would be a good tooth to receive a full coverage stainless steel crown. So multi-surface caries in primary or young permanent tooth or extensive caries where you feel that the intracoronal restorations may fail, go ahead and do a stainless steel crown restoration. Class 2 lesions where the caries extends beyond the anatomic line angles, then go for stainless steel crown because retention of even composite restoration would be very difficult in those areas. So the retention will be very poor. So go for stainless steel crown if the caries extends beyond anatomic line angles. Then you need to put stainless steel crown for all the teeth or tooth in which you have performed pulp therapy. Essentially because after you perform pulp therapy, the dentine becomes desiccated because there is no moisture coming from the pulp. So the desiccated dentine becomes brittle and prone to fracture. So all these teeth we need to provide a full coverage crown using stainless steel crown. Otherwise the tooth may get fractured in due course of time. So same goes for young permanent tooth. So if you have done any kind of pulpotomy or pulpectomy or root canal that requires a full coverage crown. Then we have developmental defects. If you see, this is molar incisor hypoplasia case. So this particular tooth is a permanent molar and it has got multi-surface decalcified tooth structure. And the best we can do is put a stainless steel crown so that the whole crown is covered and the tooth is well protected. Here it is a very severe form of amelogenesis imperfecta, and these molars can greatly be preserved by using a full coverage stainless steel crown. Then it can be used as an interim restoration for a fractured tooth or traumatized tooth, or it can also be used as to correct single tooth crossbite, where you can put the crown in the reverse cementation, and patients with severe bruxism can be used because the stainless steel crown will not wear off the antagonist tooth, and therefore in severe bruxism can be safely used. Then stainless steel crown can also be used as an abutment to a space regainer or space maintainer appliance. If you see here, the stainless steel crown is here, stainless steel crown, and these are the arms and the loops of the space maintainer. So these are called as reverse crown and loop space maintainer. This one is called here is a distal shoe, and if you see, this particular crown is restored with a stainless steel crown so that the appliance can remain in service for a very long time. And this also, the stainless steel crown can also be used in habit breaking or other orthodontic appliances as well. Then stainless steel crowns can also be used for guiding teeth. So if you see in this particular situation, this tooth has been pulp treated, pulpotomy, the root resorption has happened, and now the permanent tooth is got stuck under the tooth. So here in this case, a stainless steel crown was given with subgingival extension, and this stainless steel crown is now guiding the eruption of the permanent tooth. If we had not put stainless steel crown, the permanent would have got stuck under the primary tooth until the primary roots would resorb. So if you see here, the remaining bone width is quite a bit, and this tooth will definitely get ectopic eruption if we do not do something very quickly. So here in this case, a stainless steel crown was put, and it is now guiding the eruption of the permanent molar, that is the mandibular permanent molar. Then can be used as space maintainers, like we have discussed before, as an abutment for space maintainers. And in this case, if this particular tooth is pulp treated, pulpotomy has been done, then we have to give a stainless steel crown, and the same stainless steel crown we can use for our space maintainer. Okay, now let's look at the different types of crowns. Historically, when the stainless steel crown had come, they had arrived in an untrimmed form. So if you see the margins and the gingival margins is untrimmed, then it was modified as pre-trimmed, and then it is modified as pre-contoured. That means the trimming is done here and the crown is more contoured to suit or match the anatomy of the tooth that we are trying to restore. So now we are using pre-trimmed, pre-contoured stainless steel crown in our clinics. So here are some of the features of the untrimmed. Here are some of the features of pre-trimmed. And this is what we're using in our clinics: is pre-trimmed, pre-crowned, pre-crimped with a softer metal designed to snap over the preparation without any alteration. So basically these stainless steel crowns are little flexible. So we are now more popular is a stainless steel crown. So these are the different sizes of the stainless steel crowns. If you can see here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, and it is available for each quadrant. So for all the molars, so primary molar, that is B and E. So this E means that it is for the primary second molar, and this here is in the Palmer's notation. Okay. So here in this picture, if you see the primary, the stainless steel crown are not only available for primary teeth, but they're also available for permanent molar as well. So we have these two boxes available in the clinics for us to use. So how do we do how do we restore a tooth using a stainless steel crown? Some of the factors we should consider is dental age of the patient, right? If the tooth is going to exfoliate in the next 6 or 8 months, no point giving a full coverage crown. Then patient's cooperation, because this will require some crown preparation, the patient should cooperate with us, at least keep the mouth open till we can do the crown preparation, or cooperate with us till we cement the crown. So this would be a chair side procedure where patient cooperation is required. Medically compromised or disabled children, it's not a very good idea to put a stainless steel crown in their mouth. It is better to extract the tooth rather than to leave a foreign object in the mouth, which may get dislodged or fractured, and the patient may aspirate, and we will never come to know because the child is disabled and they may not be able to inform us that something has happened in the mouth. So in those cases, don't use any foreign objects in the mouth, especially when you're using stainless steel crown. So the steps, these are the steps outlined for you, and we will look at each step at a time. So first step is pre-operative evaluation of occlusion. So ensure that we have enough space for restoration of the crown. Sometimes the tooth is so badly decayed that there is supra eruption from the opposing side, which does not leave any place for us to put the crown, right? So in those cases, you cannot put a crown because there is no space because of supra eruption of the opposing tooth. And then another problem is, if you look at this particular tooth, because of the loss of the marginal ridge, this particular tooth will drift into this area here, and then it will become very difficult for us to to put a crown because we already have a space loss in this area. So again, you have to consider the horizontal space loss as well. Then you have to look at the mobility of the tooth, which will tell us about the pre-shading exfoliation stage. And then you also have to look at the cusp fossa relationship, so that the crown are not in supraocclusion when you cement the crown. The crown selection, two ways of doing it. First is you measure the mesiodistal dimension of the tooth that you're going to restore and match the mesiodistal dimension with the stainless steel crown available. So from sizes 2 to 7. Otherwise, once you finish your tooth preparation, you can also do trial and error method, in which you try each crown and then you find the best fitting one. The smallest crown that completely covers the prepared tooth should be chosen. Local anesthesia will be required because we will be cutting the crown to make space for the stainless steel crown, and therefore we will be touching the gingiva, and if the tooth is vital, then the child may have sensitivity, and to ensure the child cooperates, we have to ensure that the child is comfortable during the treatment. Then we have to have isolations. The crowns are very small and therefore very slippery in wet environment like in the mouth, and if you can use rubber dam, it would be much better. But again, depending on the child's cooperation, it is mandatory, not compulsory. Then removal of the caries. So once you have selected the crown, you go ahead and remove the decayed area of the tooth using a large round burr. And if a pulpotomy is to be done, do the pulpotomy. If the pulpectomy has to be done, perform the pulpectomy. Or if deep caries management has to be done, then you have to do the deep caries management. All right, and then you have to restore with the stainless steel crown. The crown preparation, since this is not a cast restoration, we have to do the crown preparation and the cementation of the crown using the preformed crown chair side. Okay, and the retention relies on the natural undercuts and adequacy of the crimping and the luting material. So we have to ensure that we do not do excessive crown cutting to ensure that there is bulk of the tooth with its natural undercut, so that the crown can get retained. So here are the things that you need for your crown preparation and your crown cementation. And these are the steps that you need to follow for your crown preparation, starting from occlusal reduction, occlusal beveling, interproximal reduction, and line angle refinement. So here it shows, in this particular diagram, it shows the occlusal reduction that you have to do, 1 to 1.5 millimeter, and you can measure it against the tooth that is unprepared to see how much preparation you have done. Okay, in this picture, if you see, that's the crown preparation has been done. Try to maintain the anatomy of the cusp when you are doing crown preparation. Then you go ahead and do proximal reduction. Okay, the idea for proximal reduction is that you need to reduce the proximal surfaces so that the crown can seat over the tooth. Otherwise, the crown will get stuck between the tooth teeth. So when you're doing, you have to do proper slicing. In this particular figure, if you see, these are improper slicing. So our idea is to open the contact areas with a 10-degree convergence occlusally. This is what we need to avoid. Okay, and this is what we need. This is too much convergence occlusally. We're going to reduce the crown too much, and the crown will rotate on the tooth. So this again is wrong because we are making a ledge formation or a shoulder preparation here. So we do not need to do this. The crown will not seat. Then you have to go for a buccal or lingual reduction. Now remember, on the buccal side of the molars you have the cervical bulge, and this cervical bulge will have an undercut underneath it. So we do not need to reduce that buccal bulge because that will be acting as our natural retentive area. So but if the bulge is too much, then you can reduce it to reduce the bulk of the bulge so that the crown can go over it and snap fit into the natural undercut. Lastly, you need to round off all line angles. So this will ensure that the crown does not rock and it seats properly. Then after the correct crown size is selected, the crown is placed on the prepared tooth, and the crown height can be reduced by removing about 1 millimeter of the crown initially with a crown and bridge scissors or a carborundum disc. So when you seat the crown, there will be some white blanching of the gingival margin, which will indicate that the crown is overextending in the gingival margin. The crown should be 0.5 to 1 millimeter subgingivally. That's it. If it is more, you will have white blanching of the gingival margin. So what you can do is you seat the crown, that is the initial trial, initial adaptation, and you can mark this area of the crown with a scalpel or with a small round burr, and then you can remove the crown and you can remove whatever crown length is under this area, leaving about 1 millimeter, and then you can seat the crown to check again for the blanch. This is the figure I was talking about. This is the marking that was done, and leaving 1 millimeter you cut off all the crown. So now the occlusal gingival length will become more approximated to the restored part of the tooth. When you are doing the trimming of the gingival margin, you have to ensure that when you are looking at the first primary molar mandibular, the gingival margins is something called as stretched out S. So when you are cutting the tooth in this area using your scissor, try to maintain this stretched S. And then for the buccal gingival margin of the second primary molar, you have a smile. Okay, so this is how you have to cut the tooth. Don't cut it flat or a straight, otherwise you're going to expose the tooth in this particular area. Similarly, interproximally you have something called as frown. Okay, so when you're using your scissor to cut interproximally, you have to ensure that you maintain this frown so that the tooth is not exposed in that area and there's no excess stainless steel crown in the proximal area. This here, this is the crimp part of the crown, so this produces that crimping so that the crown can go and engage in the undercut in this particular area and in this particular area. So this crimping makes the crown more tight fitting. Then finally, because you have cut the crown with scissors, you need to polish the gingival margin of the crown so that it is not very sharp and does not have any ragged edges or any stainless steel tags. So you can use a rubber wheel to polish the gingival margin of the crown. Also, the polishing will remove that crown number, that E3, E4, E5 or D3. Can remove it from the stainless steel crown. So you have to finish and polish the crown before you do. The occlusal reduction is good. The crown will seat without any supraocclusion. Now when you check for final occlusion, you can also take a bite wing to check for the crown seating. So if you see here, this proximal surface is well flushed with the surface of the tooth. This proximal surface is well flushed with the proximal surface of the tooth, so there is no overhang of the crown here. The crown is good fitting, and if you see the molar here, the crown will not interfere with the eruption of the molar. If this crown was too big for the tooth, it would come out and it will interrupt the eruption of the permanent molar. So we need to ensure that the permanent molar is safe and it can erupt unimpeded. There will be some modifications required. So if you have a crown which is larger than your tooth preparation and the next size crown is too large, what you can cut the crown on the buccal aspect, and then you can overlap the crown over each other just like this, and then you can weld it and you will have a crown which is more closely fitting the tooth structure. So this is for oversized crown or an undersized tooth. Then we have an oversized tooth or undersized crown. So we have this tooth which requires a bigger crown, but we have a crown which is smaller in size. So what we can do is we can cut this particular crown from the buccal aspect, and we can add a sheet of stainless steel which we commonly used in orthodontic bands, and we can weld it, and then we can have a crown that is more closely adapting proximally especially, and you fear that the crown will not cover that deep subgingival caries. You can again add a piece of orthodontic molar band, okay, and weld it in that area, and then you can cement it. So these are some modifications that you can do with stainless steel crown. Because it is a metal, you can use your welding machine, spot welders that is available in the orthodontic clinic, to weld the pieces of orthodontic bands onto the tooth, onto the stainless steel crown to cover the area. Okay, so to quickly uh, recapitulate what we have learned in this session is, if we have a multi-surface caries or an hypoplastic tooth with multi-surface hypoplastic tooth, or a tooth which is pulp treated, we have to provide a full coverage stainless steel crown. So stainless steel crown, we have to prepare the tooth to receive the stainless steel crown. Otherwise the crown will be too bulky. So we have to have an occlusal reduction, the proximal reduction, the knife edge finish, and we have to have the crown adaptation and then cementation. All right, so in this lecture we have looked at how we can restore the posterior teeth. The stainless steel crown for posterior teeth was once upon a time also available for the anteriors, but it was so anesthetic that its use has been discontinued, and we are looking for anteriors more aesthetic crown preparations using stainless steel crown with open face, okay, which again requires multiple steps. So again, it is not very popular. But what is popular is your composite resin strip crowns or zirconia crowns for the anteriors. But for the posterior, stainless steel crown is still a gold standard and still used. For the posteriors, zirconia crowns for posterior teeth, just like the anterior teeth, is also available. And again, the tooth preparation has to be done extensively, but it is quite out of the scope of for the undergraduate teaching. So I have left it out purposefully. With this, we end the session, and we will look at the part C of 3, where we talk about ART. So it is goodbye from me. Have a good day.